According to Don Hill, in July 2017, he was standing on the ground floor of the World Trade Center in Manhattan, New York. As he looked around, he couldn't stop thinking about the tragic events of September 11th. According to Don Hill, in July 2017, he was standing on the ground floor of the World Trade Center in Manhattan, New York. As he looked around, he couldn't stop thinking about the tragic events of September 11th, 2001, when terrorists flew two planes into the Twin Towers. He said he stood there imagining the devastation and wondered how the human heart could become so filled with such evil. At the same time, he admired how America had rebuilt the structure and brought it back to life. Don Hill said that while he was there, he noticed two white women walking past. He politely asked them if they could help him take a picture because he was a tourist. One of the women smiled, took his phone, snapped a few pictures, and handed him it back to him. She then told him, "I think you just got a message." Don Hill said he checked his phone and saw a text that read, "Pay me my money." There was no name attached to the message, only a Nigerian phone number. Since he was still in America and expected to return to Nigeria in a few days, he decided to ignore it for the moment and planned to find out who had sent it after he got home in Nigeria. He then explained that the story actually began before his trip to America. Don Hill explained that the event leading to that mysterious text message began before his trip to the United States. While preparing for his journey, he spent a few days at the home of Sir Ateketom in Port Harcourt. During the visit, he met a young businesswoman who sold quality Senegalese outfits and kaftans. They quickly became friends, exchanged phone numbers, and he promised to visit her whenever he was back in Port Harcourt. True to his word, he later visited her. What was supposed to be a brief stop turned into an overnight stay after a heavy downpour flooded the roads, making it impossible for him to return home safely. According to Don Hill, they spent the evening talking about life. He made it clear that his priority was raising his sons and that he wasn't looking for a relationship. As the night wore on and the rain continued, the unexpected happened. The encounter that would eventually set off a chain of events he never saw coming. Don Hill explained that the events leading to that mysterious text message began before his trip to the United States. While preparing for his journey, he spent a few days at the home of Sir Ateketom. During that visit, he met a quiet, friendly young businesswoman who sold quality Senegalese outfits and kaftans. They got along well almost immediately, exchanged phone numbers, and before he left, he promised to stop by whenever he was back in Port Harcourt. Sometime later, he kept that promise. According to Don Hill, he took a taxi to her house one afternoon. The journey led him through unfamiliar roads, several winding streets, before he finally arrived. Just as he reached her gate, a light drizzle began to fall. She welcomed him warmly, invited him inside, and offered him a cold drink while she prepared lunch. He decided he had met a nice woman. He described her home as simple but comfortable. As they talked, the rain became heavier until it turned into a torrential downpour. Soon, the streets were flooded, making it impossible for anyone to travel safely. Over a meal of delicious fisherman's soup, a delicacy in the States, they talked about life, family, and the future. Don Hill told her that he was raising four boys on his own and that his children were his greatest responsibility. He explained that he wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship because of all his attention was focused on giving his boys a better future. As evening approached, the rain showed no signs of stopping. By then, transportation had become almost impossible. There were no ride-hailing services available at that time, and the flooded roads made the journey back to Owerri extremely dangerous. She suggested that he spend the night instead of risking his life on the road. Before making his decision, he called his children to let them know that he would not be able to return home because of what had happened. the rains, and the flood. According to Dunhill, he had no reason to believe that staying the night would lead to anything more than an unexpected delay. He wasn't committed to anyone, and neither was she. They were simply two adults caught in circumstances beyond their control. As night grew colder and the rain continued to fall, their friendship became more intimate. Looking back, Dunhill admitted that it seemed like an ordinary decision at the time. He never imagined that a single night would eventually trigger a series of events that would leave him questioning how far some people were willing to go over money, emotions, and perceived betrayal. The next morning, everything appeared normal. Dunhill said he woke up early with thoughts of returning to his children. After receiving a call from one of his sons asking when he would be back home, he prepared to leave. Before he departed, he and the young woman shared a warm goodbye, and he made his way back to Owerri without any sign that trouble was waiting ahead. Because he had purchased several outfits from her before leaving, he still owed her a balance of 40,000. He intended to settle the debt after returning from America and selling some of the goods he planned to bring back. To him, it was a simple business arrangement and only required a little patience. He had considered her as a good friend. But life had other plans. Maybe the lady too had her own plans too. Well, that is life. His travel schedule changed unexpectedly, for he had planned to travel to America before he even met the lady. And so, as his travel schedule changed unexpectedly, he found a cheaper flight to New York. That was actually what happened. Instead of waiting, he left Nigeria earlier than planned. Weeks later, while touring the World Trade Center in Manhattan, his phone buzzed with the mysterious message demanding payment. Pay me my money. At the time, he had no idea who had sent it. It was until he returned to Nigeria, inserted his local SIM, and received a phone call that he discovered the sender was the same woman he had visited in Port Harcourt. At first, he apologized and explained his situation. He told her that all his money was tied up in goods and a vehicle he had imported, and that once everything was cleared and sold, he would immediately pay the outstanding naira. 40,000 naira. Instead of understanding, her attitude suddenly changed, he said. The friendly woman he thought he knew sounded angry, impatient. No matter how calmly he explained his financial situation, she refused to listen. Within days, strangers began calling his phone, demanding that he pay her money. Some insulted him while others spoke as though he had deliberately cheated her. Dunhill said he was shocked. He insisted he had never denied owing the money. All he had asked for was a little more time, yet the pressure kept increasing. Then one day, after another heated conversation, a woman ended the call with words that sent chills through him. She reportedly told him, "This money you refuse to pay, you will pay it somewhere." At first, he dismissed the statement as nothing more than an angry threat. He had no idea those words would soon lead him to one of the strangest experiences of his life, a journey to a remote village in Delta State, where a shrine messenger would unexpectedly call his phone and summon him to appear before a traditional priest. The strange phone calls didn't stop. Dunhill said that just when he thought things could even get any stranger, an unfamiliar number called him. When he answered, the caller introduced himself as a messenger from the shrine. The calls The caller's message was both shocking and confusing. According to the messenger, someone had brought his name there, and the chief priest wanted him to come immediately. At first, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He asked why a shrine would be looking for him when he had done nothing wrong. The messenger didn't explain much. He simply pleaded with him to come, insisting that the matter was serious. Doghill ignored the call, But the following day, the messenger called again, then again and again. Each call sounded more urgent than the first. Finally, the messenger warned him that if he failed to appear within 3 days, something terrible would happen to him. He explained that the chief priest wasn't asking for money but wanted him to come so the matter would be settled before it was too late. According to him, the fear in the man's voice sounded genuine. He didn't seem like a prank. Still unsure of what to do, he reached out to a trusted friend and explained everything that had happened, from the unpaid balance to the threatening phone calls and now the mysterious invitation to the shrine. His friend advised him not to ignore the summons, that he should go. He thought within himself his hands were clean, his conscience clear, and so he admitted to his friend he didn't have enough money for the expected journey because most of his funds were still tied up in the imported goods he is yet to clear and sell. Without hesitation, his friend sent him some money for transport. The next morning, he set out for the long journey. As he traveled, the shrine messenger kept calling to check on his progress, urging him to arrive as early as possible. The repeated calls only added to the tension. Eventually, he reached a junction where public transportation could go no further. From there, he was told he would need a motorcycle to continue into the interior village. The motorcycle rider, listening carefully as Dunhill explained why he was traveling to the village. The rider's cheerful expression quickly disappeared. According to him, the man became unusually serious and told him that very few people willingly travel to that area unless they had pressing reasons. Instead of dropping him at the next village as originally planned, the rider offered to take him to the place even though it meant traveling deep into unfamiliar territory. The journey became increasingly lonely. They rode for miles, a long, narrow road surrounded by thick vegetation. They rode for miles along a narrow road surrounded by thick vegetation. There were long stretches where they saw no vehicles at all, only the occasional farmers on the bush or villagers walking in the distance slightly. The silence was unsettling. Then, just when he wondered whether they were even in the right track, he heard someone calling his name from the bushes. The motorcycle stopped. A young man ran out smiling. It turned out to be the same shrine messenger who had been calling him repeatedly. He explained that he had been waiting for hours, hoping he would arrive before nightfall. The messenger climbed into the motorcycle and directed them into a narrow bush path leading to the shrine. As they approached the compound, he saw he felt the weight of his legs. When they got there, people had gathered there with different disputes and complaints. Elders were seated in a council, while the chief priest was addressing one matter after another. When the priest noticed his arrival, he paused everyone else. He instructed him to come forward and sit on an ancient chair placed directly in front of him. Without asking a single question, the priest greeted him by his name. Then he asked about his kids. According to him, that immediately caught him off guard because he had never met the man before. The questions continued. The priest mentioned the woman that had asked him what had happened. Don he calmly explained that he had bought clothes from her, paid most of the money, and still owed a balance of 40. He said he had never denied the debt and had only asked for a little time because all his money was tied up in business. The chief priest listened quietly, then he made a statement that left him speechless. According to him, the priest said he already knew he didn't have the money and he knew someone gave him money for transport fare to make this journey and knew there had been no promise of marriage between him and the woman. Hearing these things from a complete stranger made him realize that the meeting was unlike anything he had ever experienced. But the biggest surprise was still to come. The chief priest called out the woman's name. Moments later, she walked out from one of the huts within the shrine. The moment their eyes met, both of them froze. Neither had expected to see the other there. According to him, the woman looked completely shocked the moment she saw him sitting before the chief priest. It was obvious she never expected him to honor the invitation, let alone arrive before the council of elders. The chief priest allowed a few moments of silence before speaking. He turned to the woman and asked a simple question. If this man admitted that he owes you money and asked for more time, why did you claim he refused to pay? For a moment she hesitated, then she offered another explanation. She claimed that the man had insulted her mother and that was why she had become angry. Dunhill immediately denied the accusation. He explained that he had never met her mother in his life. The only conversation he remembered was that a woman had called his phone demanding payment. When she began insulting him, he simply told her that he had done business with her daughter with her daughter, not with her, and that he would pay as soon as he had the money. The chief priest listened without interrupting either of them. According to him, it was as though the priest already knew every detail before anyone spoke. He simply wanted both sides to tell the truth in front of the elders. After listening carefully, the priest addressed them both. He reminded the woman that disagreements over money should never become matters of life and death. Then he turned to him and asked him when he would realistically be able to settle the debt. He replied that he intended to pay as soon as imported goods were sold. The priest nodded. He gave him additional time and instructed him to honor his promise. Then came an unexpected ritual. A bottle of stout was brought before them. The chief priest performed traditional rites over it before handing it over to the woman. She took a sip. The bottle was then passed to Dunhill, who finished what remained. According to him, the chief priest declared in front from that moment forward, saying neither of them should wish evil upon the other. If either person left the shrine with malicious intentions or sought to harm the other spiritually or physically, they would bear the consequences themselves. With that, the dispute was declared settled. Before Dunhill could leave, another issue arose. The Council of Elders expected drinks to be provided as part of the traditional process. Embarrassed, Dunhill admitted he barely had enough money left to pay for his journey home. One of the elders quietly stepped forward and paid on his behalf. Dunhill said he was deeply touched by the old man's kindness, especially because they had never met before. As he prepared to leave, he expected the woman to apologize for everything that had happened, but she said nothing. Without any word, she walked away. That was the last time they ever saw each other. The motorcycle rider took him back to the main road, and before nightfall he had safely returned home to his children. A few days later, the money he had been expecting finally became available. Wanting to keep his word, he contracted the shrine messenger and informed him that he was ready to pay both the 40 he owed and the money spent during the settlement. To his surprise, the chief priest instructed him not to send the money directly to the woman. Instead, he was told to send everything through the shrine. According to the priest, if she had been willing to travel all the way from Port Harcourt to invoke spiritual intervention over 40,000, then she should be able to return in person to receive the payment and officially close the matter. Dunhill followed the instruction exactly as he was directed. After sending the money, he never heard from the woman again. Looking back on the experience, Dunhill said the incident taught him a lesson he would never forget. He realized that not everyone handles conflict with patience or understanding. Some people allow anger, pride, and desperation to push them far beyond what most would consider reasonable. Whether one believes in traditional institutions or not, he said the experience reminded him to be careful about the people he trusts, to honor his financial commitments, and never to underestimate how differently others may respond to disappointments. He ended his story with a simple warning: life has a way of teaching lessons when you least expect them. Be careful who you offend, be careful who you trust, and always do your best to keep your word. Sometimes the smallest disagreements can grow into something you never imagined. But that is life. Things like this happen. So learn from this story. Always keep your hands clean. And so he discovered that day that the traditional institution of Africa is one that is reverenced. Whether one believes in traditional institutions or not, he said, the experience reminded him to be careful about the people he trusts, to honor his financial commitments, and never to underestimate how differently others may respond to disappointment. He ended his story with a simple warning: life has a way of teaching lessons when you least expect. Be careful who you offend, be careful who you trust, and always do your best to keep your word. Sometimes the smallest disagreement can grow into something you never imagined. And with these words, Don Hill's remarkable story came to an end, leaving everyone to reflect on the choices people make. Imagine his hands were not clean. Just imagine if he was deceptive and not straightforward with the lady. He would have ended in shame and great punishment. Dunghill is sending this story and telling it so young ones, and in fact everyone, would be careful. He said, when money, emotion, and pride collides, is a recipe for disaster, and thus we should be careful and watchful all the time. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more fascinating true life stories, mysteries, African folklore, and African events, and inspiring experiences, kindly subscribe to my humble channel. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss any story. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.